As part of my ongoing Fire Only series in Zenless Zone Zero, I wanted to discuss what my pool plans or my pool priorities were going to be for this series. For that I have this simple tier list tool that I made, where we have 3 columns and in the rows we have the priorities. We have the damage column, which is simply where I expect the damage to come from. We have the support, where you have to imagine your stun characters and your support characters are going to go. And then in W engines, we're going to discuss the W engine. So for the first 3, we have the priorities, and then lastly, we have only a free and if we already have the character. Only a free basically is to say either it's an A rank or a standard banner S rank. Usually we just want to focus on getting those based on our luck on a standard banner or maybe in a 50-50 loss. I will also mention one other character I think in this category, but we'll get there when we get there. For the priorities, you can imagine high priority as characters that we will pull for as soon as these banners release, and we don't really have to think about it. Medium priority we can kind of think of as if we already have everything that we have as a high priority, and we have a decent amount of pools banked up, and we're safe to round out our teams a little bit more with these characters. You can also think about maybe there's going to be a banner where there is a 100% guarantee on the first pool. If you go back to the 2.5 update, I believe, where we had one banner where the first character and the first W engine you pulled for on a rerun was going to be a guarantee. That is something to consider for medium priority as well. Lastly, we have low priority. These are generally the characters that are not very strong or maybe don't make the biggest of difference, but if we can get them, they might be a nice upgrade or they would round out a team a bit more. But these are generally the characters that we would focus on only if we have all the high and medium priorities and are no longer interested in vertically investing, then low priority is the play. I'm gonna go over the characters in release order, and lastly I'll also go over the W engines once we've gone over the characters. Now I will be going through the list of characters chronologically as they released, but I think I can start with Norma, because Norma is going to be releasing very soon. Norma is a high priority. Obviously, new characters are generally going to be the strongest, and in this case Norma will be one of the strongest characters that I can get in the support category. Not in the damage category, though it's close, because Norma does provide a lot of personal damage. And she provides a lot of other things that most stun units nowadays have, which is a stun damage multiplier, a stun duration extension, and just generally a very good amount of days buildup. The one thing that she provides that is extra is the chain attacks that she can give to your DPS. And a lot of the DPSs that you have in Fire Only can actually work quite nicely, with Evelyn obviously scaling very nicely with chain attacks. Soldier 11 as well, and the 2 Rupture agents in Manato and Banyue also do like having their chain attacks, particularly because of their disc set. The Youngquai Summit disc set requires you to do chain attacks or ultimates, and having Norma give chain attacks is quite nice. I also put Phoenix here. We don't know anything about Phoenix, but a character named Phoenix I'm going to assume is fire. I think that's safe to assume, and because new characters are generally going to be the strongest, I'll put her in high priority as well. We should kind of consider building up a little bit of a bank of pulls for Phoenix, and I think Claret is maybe also going to be fire. It's not so clear because I'm only going off of the color. She has a red hair, and that might mean she is fire. I have no clue. For the remaining characters, we do have Ben, and from Mindscapes it's not really worth discussing. Lucy is much more interesting, because Lucy is kind of the only true support character in Fire. And while obviously we don't really want to be pulling for A ranks, I think there's an argument to be made for Lucy in low priority. Purely because she's the only one, and as long as we don't have Lucy, we're not gonna have a character that is very good to have to round out a team. I'm gonna put her only if free for now, right now we're conserving pools, but suppose a couple months down the line and we still don't have Lucy and she ends up being one of the rate up A ranks on a banner, we should consider pulling for Lucy. Coleda, I'm not sure. I think Coleda is going to be in the only if free category in particular, because Coleda is a stun character in a element with already a lot of stun characters. I don't think Coleda is going to have much long-term use since she's pretty much weaker than every single stun character that is available. Soldier 11 is a pretty good character to have, especially as the free option as the damage dealer. Now obviously because Soldier 11 is a standard banner character, we're gonna have to hope that we get her as an S rank on a standard banner, or maybe get unlucky and get her in a 50-50 loss. Bernice is arguably the least useful limited character that we can get right now. One of the big things that Bernice is very good at right now is in wind teams, but obviously we don't get to play wind teams because it's a fire only account. Or she can work as a disorder enabler, but as a disorder enabler you still need a different attribute to play off of, and we don't get to do that. So the only real thing that she does is a little bit of off-field damage, and she is able to activate Infernal Metal. She's an interesting disc set, but it kind of puts her more as a support character. Now the thing is, you can maybe get her for free, because I think in around 2.4 they put out a special shop where if you have a particular item, which is pretty difficult to obtain as a free-to-play, you can get her, and also her W engine. We'll have to see what happens. Maybe the 3.1 anniversary has some kind of item so we can get her for free. Lighter is the first limited fire stun character, and he is a pretty interesting case because his buffs are actually not bad. They still are not bad. He gives a good amount of damage percent, fire damage percent, and he also gives a stun damage duration extension. So he should be pretty good, but most people consider him quite bad, particularly because his additional ability is quite restrictive, where he does not work with rupture characters. That's made him skill quite badly with some of the strongest fire characters in the game, and because of that he's lost a lot of relevance, and it's difficult to say if that's because his buffs are not good enough anymore, or if that's due to his restrictive additional ability. I think since I'm playing a fire only account, I can maybe consider him as a low priority. We're gonna need a second limited stun character at some point, and in that sense we could also consider him medium priority. But I think I want to first discuss Jufufu before I really discuss Lighter, which I think, let's just start with Jufufu. Jufufu released kind of as the rupture support, where she gives a decibel refund and also a good amount of crit damage boost. Beyond that, she's not really all that great in terms of days build up. I think Lighter and Jufufu are comparable. Jufufu is a little bit more off field. The discussion of who has better buffs is a little bit difficult to say. I think between the two of them, Lighter is maybe a little bit more dependent on his W engine. And also the fact that Jufufu is technically a little bit more of a generalist, where she can also work with rupture characters where Lighter cannot. On the other hand, it's possible that Lighter gets a buff before Jufufu does, and then the conversation flips, but that is so speculative. It's really difficult to choose between the two of them. It might be a good idea to just wait and see, and maybe one of them gets put on a guarantee banner, or one of them gets a buffs before the other one, and then the conversation between the two will be whoever comes out on top on whatever happens. The next four characters that we should consider are the four damage type characters, starting with Evelyn. Evelyn came out and she was pretty strong at the time. She seemed to be a fair bit stronger than Soldier 11. Since then, Soldier 11 obviously has gotten her buff that made her pretty close in terms of performance with Evelyn. But now that Norma has released, you could argue that Evelyn got a little bit of an upskill, with Norma being now her best teammate over Lighter. Now in terms of damage profiles, she should be low priority, all things considered. But I'm gonna bump her to medium purely because I like Evelyn. I was thought about pulling for Evelyn, but never quite did. Next up is Orphe. Orphe is interesting because she's not really that good of a character. She's arguably the weakest character from Season 3. The big reason for that is that she's pretty reliant on having an aftershock damage dealer or attack agents in her team, which is only Soldier 0 and B. But she should still provide a good amount of personal damage, and also she can kind of double as a support. She gives 1000 attack with bad uptime because again she's pretty reliant on having an aftershock teammate for that uptime. But compared to the 600 that Lucy gives with also pretty mediocre uptime, I think it's very well worth considering pulling for her at a medium priority, because we have so little supportive agents that can provide buffs outside of the stun characters that we have access to. Editor here, 3 corrections. Her buff is only 700 attack, not 1000. Then her buff uptime can be extended by any aftershock unit, which includes Jufufu. That's interesting. The reason I mentioned aftershock attackers is because Orphe and Magus provides a substantial buff to aftershock damage. In any case, the point still stands that she is an upgrade over Lucy due to her personal damage contribution. After that there's Manato. Now, we did end up getting Mindscape 1 of Manato, so we have Manato. Of course, Mindscapes will continue to be a conversation, but I don't think Manato is strong enough to really consider Mindscapes for. We prefer to have bulk currency elsewhere for some of the stronger agents, such as Banyue. Banyue is also a Rupture Fire agent and is simply stronger than Manato. Very comparable in damage to Evelyn. I think the biggest issue with Banyue on this account is that we don't have a true Rupture support. And that's gonna make his damage contributions a bit worse. We'd most likely have to look towards playing double stun maybe. I'm not too sure about Banyue on Fire Only, but he is still a character that I quite like and would consider pulling for purely just because he seems interesting to play. He'll have a lot of technique, and especially in more makeshift teams he's going to be quite difficult to play well. But having access to a Rupture agent to go up against some of the Rupture content can be a good investment, so medium priority it is. Next up we have the W engines that I want to talk about. Now, the A ranks I think are not too interesting. I don't even know where this goes. I don't think I have it, but I also don't want it, so I'm gonna leave it here. We have Kaboom the Cannon. Kaboom the Cannon is a very good W engine. Similar to Lucy, you could consider that a low priority pull. The only reason why I won't put it there is because the only support character we have is Lucy, and I happen to put Lucy in only a free, but suppose you put Lucy in low priority, then Kaboom the Cannon moves up with her, because it is a very good generalist W engine to have on your account. The latest W engine, again, it is a standard banner W engine. You're gonna have to hope that you get it for free, even though it is quite decent. I think every character here from the stun category can use it quite decently. It's most likely the third best or second best for all of them. It would be a nice W engine to get, but I don't think it is necessary to progress on our account, because the stun category has already quite strong W engines in Steam Oven and Fossilized Core. Continuing on with standard banner W engines, we have the Soldier 11 one. Soldier 11 W engine is quite strong. Again, standard banner, it's not really worth pulling for. Oftentimes this W engine is one of the stronger free-to-play options on attack type characters. I think Evelyn can use it to a decent level. That is also about the only one, because Orphe would prefer a different W engine, I'm pretty sure. Then, similar to Bernice herself, her W engine also goes in only a free category. It's good on Bernice, and nobody else uses it, so I don't think it goes anywhere else. But if we do get it from a free shop item, then it would probably be worth getting that over standard banner ones, with the idea of maybe we get lucky and we get one of these for free regardless. Then we have Lighter's W engine. Lighter's W engine is pretty nice actually. On fire characters it is better than the latest W engine. It is a W engine that can give damage percent to the whole team. That is a buffing W engine with impact percent as the main stat. That is good general value on every stun character that you can get specifically for fire stunners, which there are a lot of them. Evelyn's W engine probably going to be in medium priority. Could even argue high priority, purely because it would be best in slot on Soldier 11, and in case we get Soldier 11, I think this W engine definitely bumps up a tier. But since we don't have Soldier 11 and we're not sure when or if we're gonna get her, and when we do get her, if she's still relevant, I'm gonna move Evelyn's W engine down a bit, but it is very good. It gives Fire Resignor on chain attacks and ultimates. And since that already is something that Norma can provide, and since that's something that you get in stuns, it's very good on pretty much every fire attack agent that you can get. For the rest, it gives a lot of crit damage. And of course, crit damage is quite nice. Jufufu's W engine is okay on Jufufu, but doesn't really have too much general value because it is a W engine that is intended for attack scaling characters, and that is unfortunately only Jufufu as far as stun characters go. I think because it doesn't have good generalist value on this account, I have to put it down a tier. In particular because we also are unlikely to get Jufufu. Like if we get Jufufu, we might prefer to get some Mindscapes on her instead. Manato's W engine is actually Manato's best in slot, which means that we should like to get it as long as we're playing Manato. But beyond Manato, it's not really worth talking about. Orphe's W engine is an attack W engine that is only good on Orphe, and Orphe does also quite like having it. Her free-to-play options are not quite as strong as some of the other free-to-play options for attack type characters, particularly because Orphe likes having energy regen, and there's not really attack W engines that give good energy regen. That is why it is definitely worth considering pulling for, but of course Orphe and Magus has to come first, and then once we've gotten her and we've gotten some of our stronger teammates, we can also start looking at vertical investment. The same logic applies to Banyue's W engine. It is going to be his best. It would be nice to get it, but it doesn't have too much general value for my account, because it's only really good for Banyue. I suppose Manato can use it, but it's not Manato's best in slot, and there's already an A rank for that, so it's gonna go into low priority. Last we have Norma's W engine. This is an interesting one, because its main stat is crit rate, which is not really what you would think of for your average stun character, because only Norma here is the crit scaling stun character, none of the other stun characters are crit scaling. But you could argue that a crit scaling W engine on your stun allows them to get a little bit more damage output. In particular, I think something like a DPS Kaleda would be stronger with this W engine over any other one. Other than that, it has a conditional that gives some buffs to the whole team, which is pretty easy to obtain on every fire stun character in the game. And because of that, I think it has good generalist value, and because it is still quite nice to have vertical investment on one of the newer characters in the game, I'm gonna put it in medium priority. What we can see from how this tier list ended up, it's obvious that the highest priority characters are going to be the newest ones. After that, we're looking towards some of the damage dealers as well as Orphe. We can kind of be put in both. Arguably, Orphe is going to be the best pull we can get right now in terms of general value. Beyond that, we have two limited characters that are stunned that kind of fight against each other for who might be or might not be the best to pull for. Right now, we should prioritize some of the other characters that we can get and round out more of the DPS character list. Then for the free characters, we can see it's the A ranks that we don't have, or the standard S ranks that we would like to have, preferably, but it's gonna come down to luck. And Bernice if she's in the shop. And lastly, W engines are clearly just going to be prioritized based on when it is smart to go for vertical investment, which is typically what you would see for putting them on a lower priority. If we're going to talk about mindscapes, I think the only real mindscapes that I would consider going for are the mindscapes on the brand new characters, because those are going to be the most relevant for the longest period of time. The teams that we are able to form based on this tier list are obviously going to depend on the rerun order or release order on some of the newer characters. I think if we were looking at 3 strong teams, I would probably consider something like Norma Orphe, Evelyn, and then Jufufu goes with Banyue alongside, I'm guessing, Bernice for the Bernice mainly because we don't really have a different choice, and Lighter and Lucy as the most free to play accessible team, but also realistically we're not going to get Lighter or Jufufu anytime soon. For vertical investment, I think Evelyn's W engine will be our best choice. I think that's all there really is to discuss about this. I'll be looking out for whatever characters are going to be releasing. I have no idea if these roles are right or if Claret is even a fire agent. I think Phoenix is fair to say. We'll have to see what normal pools are going to be like, if it's already worth discussing vertical investment, or if we're going to focus on building up multiple teams first. I'm probably going to wait and see what, for example, the 3.1 livestream is going to be and what reruns we're going to be seeing in 3.1, which is the anniversary patch. That should give us a good amount of pools to play with and pool for future characters. I'm curious what other people think. What characters would you prioritize when you're making this account? Would you be purely focused on meta, or are you like me and are you also going to look at which characters you prefer in terms of gameplay or design? Either way, if you're already thinking about this deeply, about what Fire Only could do for you, consider subscribing so you don't miss out on what my future videos are, and then you can see how this exactly progresses in terms of what my pool plan was, and if it ever comes to fruition.